What's up, everybody? Before you get into today's episode of Cosigns and Tangents, I just have to shout out Anchor because it is by far the easiest way to start and create your own podcast. So, let me explain. One, it is free. Also, there are several tools that you can use to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and your computer. Also, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many, many more. And you can make money by doing your podcast with no minimum listenership. Ain't that awesome? And you have everything at your fingertips. It is so easy. So, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started now. All right, everybody. This is your girl, Saina Wynn, and you are tuning in to Cosigns and Tangents. And I have a very, very, very special guest for you all today. His name is Jakk Gerard, and he is from the UK. And for those who don't know, the United Kingdom, aka England. And he is going to be on my first ever series, which is going to be called Cosigns and Conversations. And I am just so excited to just sit down and just discuss, talk with him, just have a great conversation. And so, Jakk, if you don't mind, just go ahead and introduce yourself for me, please.
How's it going, everybody? First and foremost, Saina, thank you so much for having me on the show. As Saina said, my name is Jakk Gerard. I'm based in the UK, in London. A little bit about myself. I love making content online, so I do content creation on Instagram and also on TikTok. On TikTok, it's a little less serious, but on Instagram, I'm heavily involved in mental health, talking about the importance of mental health and things along those lines.
Right. And that's one of the, just to kind of give y'all a little background. It's not like we've known each other forever. I actually just duetted one of his videos on TikTok. And one day I hopped into his live and I was like, oh, he's British. And so I stayed forever. And therefore, I kind of I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. I didn't want to go too much because I wanted to, again, just have a great conversation. But one of the things when I was just, doing a little research, I saw that you kind of came into a lot of notoriety because you decided to go to the gym for like 1,000 days. Like,
Yes, that is correct. So I think for me, that was really the beginning of, let's say, my public mental health journey and talking about the importance of mental health publicly. To give some context to the listeners, basically where that stemmed from was back in 2017, unfortunately, I went through a lot of hardship, a lot of tragedy in a very short space of time. So my dad sadly passed away very suddenly. Shortly after that, my partner, who I was with at the time, we split up. I then had a cancer scare and a suicide attempt, all in the space of about 6 months. So it was quite a lot to take on. And I realized that I needed to tackle and approach life in a different way. And that's really where I started doing a deep dive on, my own mental health and also mental health in general.
Right. And I'm so sorry for your loss. I definitely know where you're coming from. I lost my father in 2018. And so that definitely, I understand how those grief spirals can definitely take you down. And so I'm sorry for your loss.
And as also for you.
Thank you. Well, and when I did hear about that, and I really, what's the word I'm looking for, related to you in that struggle, because mental health is, especially in the communities of color, are just, to me, I feel like we're just now getting to the point where we can talk about it and be open. Did you, in your community, in the UK, and as a person of color, was that a hard conversation as well to have with people in your life?
Definitely. And I think one of the main differences as well between the UK and the US is up until COVID happened, seeing a therapist, psychiatrist, all of those type of things was very taboo. And so mental health as a topic in general was something that a lot of people weren't talking about, especially men weren't talking about, and then especially being part of the Black community or part of an ethnic minority community. It wasn't something that was being talked about. But I think for me, I really having gone through the life experiences that I have been through, I recognize within myself how important it is to have open discussions on these topics. And so, as best as I possibly could, I've always tried to kind of lead the charge on that front, and be quite open and honest about what's going on below the surface.
That's beautiful, because I know that's one of the things I asked you about when I popped into your live, is just how are you dealing with like the racial reckoning and just COVID and everything. So, can I ask, are you still doing your everyday workouts?
I'm not. So I actually stopped on year 4. So I stopped a few months ago. It kind of came to a point where I felt like it had served its purpose, and I needed to start a new chapter in my life to kind of become a new person. So I'm not doing it anymore, but I am very grateful for the lessons, the life lessons that it taught me about discipline, about perseverance and resilience.
hmm And those are some of the things that I know as just getting older, that consistency is definitely key.
Yeah.
And it's also one of the hardest things to like do. Like, so when you were going through just your journey of over the last 4 years of just working out every day, like how did you stop yourself from stopping? Because that's like the hardest part.
I think the most difficult part is always going to be at the start, right? And then
hmm
after a period of time, it becomes such a habit that the idea of breaking the habit is actually a lot more stressful, a lot more difficult than continuing to do it. And that's
hmm
one of the key things that I learned is if you're able to get yourself to a certain point where it just becomes second nature, it's very easy to just continue with that action, regardless of whether it's going to the gym or reading or whatever it is that you may be working towards. It's just really getting through those initial stages.
Right, right. Well, so when you stopped, what was it like when you stopped? Was your body was just like, and your mind were like, what's going on here? Did you have like to physically make well, not obviously physically, but what did you have to do to just stop and calm down and just kind of be more in the moment and intentional?
It was quite difficult. I mean, it was thought out. I like the fact that obviously, I finished on an anniversary date as well.
Okay.
But I think the main thing for me was that I had a reason as to why I was stopping, and I knew that, it was really time for me to step away from that and to look towards developing another aspect and another part of my character and my personality.
Mhm.
And I think thus far it's been paying off. I'm still very much in the early stages of my journey and this new chapter. But it's definitely taken the form for me of, continuing to be consistent and whatnot, but more so with, my online pursuits and jumping onto TikTok and stuff like that. So just basically finding a different way to channel that energy.
Yeah. And speaking of TikTok, I've noticed that you've just been growing like a weed on there recently. Like, because I remember I popped in, I was like, okay, he's sitting about 15 and okay, 20, okay, he's in 30,000 now. So what does that feel like to be like a internet sensation? Just what does that mean to you?
I definitely wouldn't say that I'm an internet sensation, but it is quite strange. I think, for anybody who has jumped into my lives, I think they're always quite surprised that I come across as being quite grounded and quite humble. And
Mhm.
that's because it's something that's very, very important to me. I always pride myself on my personality and the value that I'm able to bring others beyond, surface shallow um, level type of things. It's really important for me to be able to get involved in these type of conversations. So I'm really, really grateful for being able to have the reach on that platform that I do. But I think one of the key things that I'm trying to figure out now is how do I transition it from, it's also giving people the entertainment aspect that I've given them thus far, to also being able to have these type of conversations that I'm having with you. So it's difficult trying to strike that balance and grow with the process while not getting big headed, if that makes sense.
Right. And that's one thing I think I stayed for, because I'm like, I came in for the accent, I stayed for the vibe.
Yes, that's what
And
we love
so,
to hear. That is
right,
what we love to hear. Yeah,
exactly. The vibe tribe. I remember we came up with that. I was like,
we
okay,
did.
yes, the vibe tribe. And so you do somehow, I don't know how you do it, but you did create a live where people felt engaged. Like I
Yes.
felt very engaged. I was like, and I stayed on there I was getting ready for work, and I was like, this is very entertaining. I don't know
how you did it, but you did it. That you were able to just create an environment. One is felt very safe,
Yeah.
and two, it wasn't about any of the crazy TikTok drama that's going on. It was just very chill and just real. Like you kept it very engaged. So kudos to you.
Thank you very much for that. I think what that really stems from is I just love being able to connect with people, and I love being able to get myself to resonate, but also have other people resonate with me on a deeper level. So I think that's kind of where that stems from.
Right, right. Can I ask, you're an Aquarius, right?
I am indeed, yes. And since jumping on TikTok, from what I've understood, Aquarius men are supposed to be awful. So that was news to me.
No, I don't. Well, I have. I can I ask you when's your birthday?
It's the 25th of January.
Are you lying?
No, I'm not lying. Is your birthday the 25th of January as
Yes,
well? That's
it's January
crazy.
25th. Yes.
That is crazy. I literally said the first time, I literally met someone last week for the first time who shares the same birthday as me. So for me to meet you, Sana, as well, and for you to just share the same birthday as well is quite wild.
That's crazy. I was like, because I got the vibe. I was like, I wonder if he, because that's like, I feel like this man is my kindred spirit. Like,
It makes sense now. It makes sense.
right. You're my birthday twin in the UK. That's what's up.
Hey, let's go. Let's go.
Wow, that's really shocking and cool. So, okay, cool. Birthday twin. Yeah, no, I haven't really met a lot of like trash Aquarius men. So I feel like that they might be just a little embittered, but it's okay.
It might be the case. Who knows?
Okay. Well, I want to kind of go a little bit kind of in a little bit of a different direction because like
Sure.
I said, I'm gonna get into some serious stuff because I'm just curious because like the way like Americans know the UK is just through TV and movies, but I've always been curious, especially with COVID happened and the racial reckoning. What was that like in the UK? Like just seeing that, like how did that affect you? And of course, I know they had to affect you mental health wise as well.
Are we specifically talking about George Floyd? What happened with George Floyd?
Yes. Well, it was like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. They all happened around the same time. But I feel like that was the trifecta of racial injustice that just broke the world's back at that time.
It's so interesting. I mean, in terms of UK culture, we always have a very close eye on US Black culture. It's something that's kind of, at least it was a lot more. I think the UK is starting to define its own culture a lot better now. But it's always been an integral part, especially, for young Black kids and young mixed race kids, an integral part of our upbringing. I remember when we were going through COVID, the majority of that first year was difficult, but I was managing it. But when all of that started coming out in the news and all of those incidents happened, that's really what broke my spirit. I think it had just got to a point where I've seen too many videos like that. I've seen too many people just being killed on camera for absolutely no reason. And it's really distressing. Watching as well from the UK to the US, it has made me realize how much worse the racism is over in the US and compared to the UK, to the extent now where I almost don't want to go to the US, not because I'm fearful, but just more because I don't want to necessarily feed into that type of economy that isn't respecting and supporting its citizens in the way that it should.
You just said a whole word and I really appreciate that because I know with the relationship with Americans is with the police, we have a very boogeyman-esque relationship with it when it comes to the police
Sure.
here with me. And so what is the relationship with the police like for people of color in the UK? Is it similar or is it just completely different?
It is very similar. I mean, there's a lot of angst and a lot of to an extent, hatred as well towards the police over here in the UK. But I think one of the major differences is obviously over here, police aren't able to carry for firearms, and so we have a lot less incidences of people getting murdered by the police. And I think that's part and parcel as to why things are, I guess, a little bit safer on this front. But there is a lot of racism that we experience growing up and kind of living over here too.
Right, because I've always heard that racism in the UK is not as explicit; it's more
Yes.
of an implicit thing. Because I know over here you could just, because I know I've been called the N word when I just walking down the street by a bunch of boys in a pickup truck.
Yeah.
So is it like that, or is just like, those microaggressions where you see somebody clutching their purse or walking across the street, or just little silly stuff like that?
It's both. It's both. It really depends on the area that you're in. Like, say, for example, I think it's a lot less likely for someone to experience that level of overt racism when they're in New York, as opposed to, say, for example, when they might be in, I don't know, like the Deep South or something like that. And it's very similar in the UK. People are a lot less likely to be overtly racist in London because they know that there's probably going to be immediate ramifications for their actions if somebody else hears that. Whereas
Right.
if you go out into the countryside where there's less ethnic
Mhm.
diversity, then people are a lot more confident to kind of talk to you in a particular type of way.
Right. Do you get profiled in London?
We do, but I was quite deliberate about the area in which I choose to live. And one of the main reasons was because it's so ethnically diverse. I knew that here, in terms of my race, I would always feel safe. And it's strange because I've lived in, let's say, like 3 different locations across the UK. And since moving here, I really don't think about racism or having to deal with racism a lot because of kind of the demographic of the area, which is really nice for me.
I know that must be a very peaceful mindset.
It is, because I think. Go on.
No, I kind of forgot what I was going to say. You got it.
I think that unto itself can be so damaging to our development when you're constantly having to think about, oh, is that person crossing the road because of my race, or are they talking to me this way, or all of these different microaggressions that you highlighted. If you're dealing with that on a daily basis, it has a massive impact on your mental health and also to your self-esteem, because you're wondering why can I not be appreciated? Why am I not valued in the same way that other people are, purely off of the basis of my skin? Why is it that you aren't able to judge me off of my character, my merits, and my accomplishments? Why do I always have to be tainted by this brush? And I think kind of when I got to that point where I just understood that, as far as I'm concerned, with these type of people, it's a lost hope. I'm not going to waste my time even trying to educate you at this point, because it's such a simple concept to me. Then it's a lot easier to take your power back if you are able to be in the right environments to do so.
Yeah, because that's one thing I've actually noticed for myself. Because it's like I worked in a lot of corporate environments where I am still of the minority, maybe the one and the only, but I've gotten to the point where I no longer hide myself or try to assimilate as much.
Yeah.
Like I used to. Anytime I go apply for a new job, I would perm my hair or straighten it or do something that would seem more palatable to people, to my white counterparts. And then as I've gotten older, and then I think over the last few years, I'm like, no, I'm done. Especially with the Trump era years in America, I'm like, I'm done. Because no matter what, you're gonna still see this Black woman. So I'm gonna be the Black woman that you supposedly fear. So I stopped straightening my hair. I stopped doing this. I stopped not saying things that other white people need to hear. I know when the George Floyd verdict came in. In my job, they were talking about candles, and I was like, hey, you guys, your Black coworkers are not okay. Let's not talk about candles when we literally seeing the world change. And so is that kind of what you were saying, that you've kind of just gotten to the point where you're going to be who you are no matter what, and if it makes you uncomfortable, you're going to be okay?
Exactly. I think there's so much power in that, because you're no longer making yourself small for people who don't care for you. And you're now choosing to respect yourself. You're choosing to respect your culture and your community. And that is difficult to do. It is very difficult to do, especially if you are in environments that are still racist. But again, I think for me, it comes from making those decisions of, if that is the case, and I know that is the case, and I have the option to go elsewhere, let me go elsewhere, because I think all of us have our own small parts to play in facilitating social change. And sometimes it really can just be as simple as choosing not to associate with organizations or with groups where you know that there's an undercurrent of subtle racism or overt racism taking place.
Right. So let me ask you this about just where you are now. Like, you sound great. You sound like your mental health you're doing great mental health wise. So what are some of your goals that you're hoping to achieve with this growing platform that you have now?
I think for me, in terms of social media, my goal has always really been to try and reach and uplift as many people as I possibly can, which is why, when you told me that you had this podcast available, I was keen to jump on here, because these are the things that really matter. Like the content that I'm putting up, it's all fun and games. Like, I love being able to bring a laugh to people, and give them a split um, quick distraction away from the normal drudgery that we go through on a daily basis, but really being able to get into the weeds and talk about topical important issues and work through them with people is something that I'm very, very passionate about. And so I mean, really the goal, so the immediate goal that I've set for myself is to try and hit 100,000 followers on TikTok in the space of a year. But honestly, the sky's the limit. If I could get to 100 million, then I would do that as well. It's really just trying to drive, positivity more than anything into people's lives. Because again, having been through what I've been through, I know how important it is to be able to have something to hold on to and something that inspires you and uplifts you.
Yeah. And I was telling my brother, I was letting him know that I really am passionate about mental health, but also for Black men,
Mhm.
just because 'cause after we lost our dad, I know that we are all still in a state of just autopilot, and I handle it in a different way. Each one of my family members are still handling it in a different way. And
Mhm.
he was so thankful that I wanted to make sure to have more conversations about Black male mental health, because he's like, no, he feels like people don't see him as a
Mhm.
Black man or see him as a mental health, because I think the patriarchy in general has made it harder for men to reach out for help and to ask for help. So when you were in, and I apologize, I do jump, so just forgive me. So when you were going through your ups and downs, did you feel comfortable enough to reach out to people, or did you just kind of do it on your own?
Yeah, I did feel comfortable enough to do it. I think I'm very lucky. First and foremost, the family dynamic that I have is great. I've always been supported in that sense. It's quite atypical. The way that my mum and my dad raised me, I think, is quite different from the way that a lot of men have been raised. I've
Mhm.
also been blessed to be surrounded by good friends. Um, and so I have a lot of people that I can turn to and have a conversation with who I know are going to be supportive. But really, that was quite a difficult journey for me, because before my dad passed away, when I was at university, which is college, the equivalent of college in the UK, I lost 3 family members in the space of 6 months. And at that point in time, I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how important it was to talk to other people, and it kind of just ate away at me. So when my dad did pass away, I already knew, that I need to be talking to people. Immediately, I got myself into therapy. I was very open with my mum and my sister and my close friends, because I knew that if I went about it in that way, then I wouldn't be holding on to so much baggage, and it would be a lot easier to work through.
Right. Did you encounter any of those like normal like Black stereotypes, like you need to pray about it, or just you don't need therapy or medication or anything like that?
A little bit, a little bit. I think I'm quite trusting of myself though as well, and it's not a
Right.
case like even now. I pray daily, because I recognize, having gone through what I've gone through as well and coming out the other side a better person, I would not have been able to do that without God's help.
Right.
But I do also think that it's important to have some balance, and so if prayer is your route to go through, then definitely do that. But also don't necessarily think that doesn't mean that there aren't other avenues that are going to help to supplement your healing process.
Right. And you said you study, I think on your live, you study psychology too, right?
I did, yeah.
Right. So did you find it, even though you study psychology? Because I know I study psychology too. That's why I was like, this man, we got to be like friends. I studied anthropology and psychology and studies in college and when I graduated. And so it still took me forever to branch out and get a consistent therapist. I didn't actually get a consistent therapist until COVID, when it just got too much. I'm like, I'm about to just snap. So did you find it like hard, even though like you had that therapy, that psychology background, to still like get therapy and do all this other stuff?
I didn't find it hard. Not at that time, no. I think now as well, I have no problems with going to get therapy. I get therapy now probably every 2 to 3 weeks just to check in, make sure that I'm doing all right and heading in the right directions and stuff. It can be a really scary thing, especially when you're first starting out doing it, and especially as a man, like to open up and be that vulnerable is difficult. It's something that I am still trying to figure out and navigate for myself, because I think one of the main issues that we as men experience, and especially within the Black community, is that there's always this prerequisite for us to be strong, even when we want to be weak. You have to be strong. And so my personal experience has been with my romantic partners that they want me to be emotionally available, but they don't actually necessarily want me to be emotional, if that makes sense. They want me to be able to talk about my emotions without actually experiencing them. And that still feels like a very big ask for a man, because it kind of it makes us robotic. It makes us seem like machines. So being able to have that space and being able to have that confidence to step into that space is I'm not surprised that it's something that a lot of men struggle with, and rightly so. And I also think that's plays in part to why suicide rates are so high still within men.
Yeah, like that really shocked me. I've never thought about it like that. How what you said about, we as a woman, we want men to express their feelings, but we don't actually want to see the emotional reactions that happens. And I've never, I'm gonna have to rethink some old relationships now. But that's a really powerful statement. Like, I've never thought about that. I'm definitely gonna make my brother listen to that. I was like, you can feel, because I know when I actually saw my dad cry once. It was the strangest thing, and it just shocked me because he was born in the 40s, and seeing an old Black man cry threw me completely off. So I'm stuck on that statement a little bit, Jack. I'm not
I
gonna
think
lie.
I think it's really interesting as well, because I think the inability to be able to, for men, a lot of men, to express themselves in a human way is also what plays into toxic masculinity, and this huge divide that I see growing right now between men and women on a deeper level. Because it seems like, as best as we're trying to understand each other and trying to find common ground, we're not quite communicating in the right ways. And I think that, at least on the male side, that women could help us out with, and I'm very aware that there's probably 10, 20, 30 times more that we can do as men to help out women. I think that's one of the key things that women could do for the men in their lives, is to really, truly, honestly, and authentically hold space for men in their lives to be able to express how they feel in a safe way without judging them and looking at them as being weaker.
Right. And I like that, because I did have a conversation with a friend of mine. It's just creating a safe space for a person to be vulnerable can be very hard. And I know as a Black woman, I found it still hard to be vulnerable with Black men sometimes, or unless they are creating. So, like you said, we got to be cognizant and be able to create those safe spaces for each other,
Definitely.
and to have those vulnerable moments and be able to cry. Because that's one thing I like about TikTok, though. I see a lot more like Black men, like with plants and babies, and just talking about their emotions. I'm just like, I'm loving this, and I know it's going to be a hard, to change these ingrained stereotypes that we have, that even flows to overseas, about how Black men should hold themselves. And there shouldn't be a stereotype. There's just, you should be able to be, and that's really hard.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, let me see. Hold on. Once I did have another question. Okay, with your therapy, like, can you give us like what was one of that piece of aha advice that maybe when you were in therapy that you got that just kind of blew your mind?
I think that's a really interesting question. I don't necessarily think that there was a point in time where I got a particular piece of information that really changed my perspective on things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's always been a very gradual process and peeling things back layer by layer. And in that unto itself, it can be really draining because you think you're making progress and you are making progress. And then you have to kind of face your demons in the eye again. And then you take, a few more steps back just to be able to take 4 or 5 steps forward. Um, but I think for me, it's really a great way to kind of assess my flaws and the things that I definitely need to work on. One of the key things that I'm actively trying to work on right now is being better at setting boundaries and stuff like that. And so that's been interesting for me, kind of doing the deep analysis on where is that necessarily stemming from? How can I be better at doing that, and what impact is that going to have on my life moving forwards too?
Gotcha. So what boundary are you trying to like start to initiate with people that you just still have trouble initiating for yourself?
I think I'm very geared towards helping people, very, very geared towards giving to people. And because of the environment that I've been raised in terms of family and friends, I've been surrounded by a lot of good people. And so I give freely. But what I'm realizing over time is, and I hate to say this, but it is true, is that there are a lot of people in this world who don't deserve your time and your energy and your love and your effort. And so just being a little bit more discerning about, okay, who are the people who are worthy of that and who are the people who aren't worthy of that, because it can be very draining if you're kind of just pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely makes perfect sense. That's why I feel you as an Aquarius, because that's one of my biggest things that I am a giver. I'm a giver. Like I will
Yeah.
give until I am dead, and I
Yeah.
have nothing left. But I will tell you, that's probably the hardest boundary that I had to set for myself as well. Because I
Mhm.
remember I had to actually like tell my brother no once, and I was like, I cannot do that, and he was like, what? I said, I am setting a boundary and I cannot do that. And he was like, okay. And it felt so strange. And it was like an amazing, powerful ability to state no.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it can really catch people off guard when they're so used to you always saying yes, when you do then turn around and start saying no. But
Mhm.
it's so important to preserve your energy. I think there's something that I have written on my wall, let's say, that says protect the jewel. And basically that kind of refers to, your energy, your talents, your gift that you're able to give back to the world. That is something that is so, so precious for you to protect, and be mindful of who you give it to, because giving it to the wrong person, it can, completely destroy you and deplete you of all of your energy.
Right. And most definitely. Okay. Well, I want to kind of get more just into what are you doing now? Because you got the platform and you're a model, right?
I do some modeling. Yeah, I do some modeling. I also have a digital marketing agency.
Okay.
And then I have a few other things on the side as well. I guess to a large extent, I'm a jack of all trades, which is good, but I'm keen to really start drilling down into kind of one area of expertise.
Okay.
And so right now, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to figure out exactly how do I navigate that and how do I piece that together.
Okay. I was asking, like, do you have a career role model that you're trying to kind of emulate where you're just kind of just figuring out as you go?
I wouldn't say I have a career role model per se. I have a very close friend who I do accountability calls with on a weekly basis. He's definitely, in terms of his lifestyle and the level of success that he's achieved, it's definitely something that I aspire towards. But I think I've always been very geared towards trying to carve out my own path. And
Mhm.
so it can be quite difficult in that sense because I've never really been one for kind of chasing the corporate ladder. And so yeah, trying to figure out, how I actually get to the places that I want to get to. It's a
Mhm.
little bit more difficult sometimes.
Yeah. So you have that like you're doing now, that entrepreneurial
Yeah.
background. You don't really want to have to work work for the man for the rest of your life. I get that completely.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I gotta go at 5 and clock in 5 p to 5 a. So uh,
I am.
got a couple more minutes with you, so I thank you so much for your time. So I want to kind of ask you like a couple fun questions. So starting out is super easy. Marvel or DC?
Marvel, definitely.
Okay, you have my heart. That's why you're an Aquarius. Okay. And I know you talked about this on your live a couple of times. What would be your superpower?
What would be my superpower? I feel like it changes every single time. But one that I came up with recently was I would love to be able to kind of download information or skills, kind of similar to what you can do on the internet. So if I say, for example, wanted to learn how to play the piano flawlessly, I'd love to be able to just, access that immediately. That would be great.
I feel you. I've always wanted to just have knowledge and just be able to do things without taking thousands of years to learn.
yeah, that's my thinking as well.
Right. I've always, if I was going to be for real, okay, I have two. If I was going to be a superhero, of course, be a Storm because she's amazing. Or Tony Stark because he's smart and he can learn how to do anything. And even if he doesn't have superpowers, he can make it. So I've always wanted to be either or.
I agree with that, yeah.
Okay. Well, I know that you said that you are British and Trinidadian, right?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
So how do you feel about your girl, Nicki Minaj?
Do you know, I actually don't follow Nicki too much, to be honest with you. Like, I only know her kind of on the basis of a few of her songs. So I wouldn't be able to say too much about her, if I'm being honest.
Okay. Just my friends, they asked me. I was trying to get more questions. She said, "Ask him about what he think about Nicki Minaj." I was like, "It depends. Like, her anaconda don't want none." Okay. So you're single. I know everybody asks you that. So when we talk about this on your, hopefully you put this on your TikTok. Everybody asks you, one, how tall are you?
I'm 6'4".
Okay. You're single or no?
I am single, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and ask those questions for the Vibe Tribe so they can stop asking you and your
They always come up every single time.
Every single time. Like, even though you're not a short king, it's like
exactly, yeah. That always comes up too.
I know. I was like, wow, you need to make sure you pin that so people stop asking you.
I know, it would save me some time, right?
Right, exactly. So what are you, I know you said that that's one, your goal is to have a family in the future, but what are you looking for in your ideal partner?
Empathy. Empathy is just massive for me. I've realized like I'm too loving and too caring and too empathetic myself to be with someone who isn't able to reciprocate or at least understands that, because otherwise with my partner I just give and give and give and give and give. If you come to me and you tell me that there's a problem, I'm going to figure it out. I'm gonna fix it. So if you come to me and you tell me you're not happy about X, Y, and Z, I'm gonna go and take you seriously and work on that. But I think if, in my experiences, dealing with people who don't have that same level of empathy that I do, I can get myself into situations where I can get taken advantage of. And again, that's also why setting boundaries is something that's incredibly important as well, I think.
Okay. All right. Remember, friends, when you listen to this, you need somebody who's empathetic, okay? Don't be selfish with your emotions. Okay, and so kind of going back into just like the British and the American differences, what are 3 things do you think Americans should know about like the UK or Black Americans especially?
We have our own culture over here, even though we're tied into what's happening in the US. There's a bubbling Black British culture over here, especially in terms of the music scene as well, party scene, all of those types of things. If you are ever in London, I would definitely recommend heading down to South London and trying to get yourself kind of in the mix with a couple of house parties, because they go crazy, like genuinely go crazy. In terms of, I think there's this perception in America that the UK isn't violent, and this is not necessarily even something that I would want to promote, but we do have our own issues in terms of gang culture and stuff like that we are trying to work through. and especially in the area that I grew up in, that was very prevalent. When I was a kid, but I think it's something that we're actively, doing quite well with. And then lastly, I would say is that in the UK we do experience racism. It is very different from the experience from the racism that I've gauged that you experience over in the US. But there's real synergy. I think more than anything, there's real synergy between the UK and the US Black culture, and there's a lot of allyship from our side, supporting everything that is going on over there on the Black Lives Matter front, trying to make progress. And we would love to see that same energy coming over to the UK, because I think what I really learned from everything that happened revolving around that period of time dealing with George Floyd is that the Black community really does span globally, and that we're all going through this experience and this struggle together. Whether that's in the same ways or not, it's something that we're all dealing with. And I think that, the more unity that we can have across different nationalities and different countries, the more powerful that we're going to be in the long run.
Definitely, I agree. Can I ask you one other question? Well, I got probably like 3 more questions.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So my friend, he went to London with his sister and a couple other people, and he's a Black man, and he noticed, I don't know if this is a thing, but he noticed that a lot of the Black people in London would come up to him and make sure he was okay. Is that a thing? Because they knew automatically, I guess, from just if they heard him speak that he was American. But he's like, they kept checking in on me. I was like, I've never heard of that.
I think part of it probably comes down to, interest and curiosity, in the same way that I know that probably if I came over to the US, that people are going to be interested to know about my experiences and stuff like that. But again, there really is, there's brotherhood and sisterhood over here for, the Black community when they come over here. As long as you're, being respectful and whatnot, we're going to make sure that you have a good time. We want to see you having a good time. I mean, there's been a few nights out that I've gone on recently, and I've bumped into a few random Americans, and I'm always geared towards, making sure that they get the right impression of the UK and that they have a great time whilst they're staying over here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, is that the equivalent of the head nod in America? I didn't know. So that's pretty cool. That it's just that commonality, that common space. Like, you all right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, in America, definitely, as soon as you open your mouth, it's going to be a gaggle of people just be like, hey, especially in the South, because I'm in Tennessee. And so, we don't hear our accents. So when we go somewhere else, people, they like, oh, you're from the South. And then when you come down here, oh, it's just going to be, people are going to try to feed you constantly.
That's fine by me. That's fine by me.
You need to try this here, and where you hanging out? Who you staying with, baby? It would be nothing but like you will have a whole home like immediately.
That sounds good to me.
Okay. Well, I'm getting close to the end. So my last question for you is that I asked everyone that is on my podcast is, what is your favorite thing about being a Black man?
This is an interesting one for me, actually, and I kind of think it's come from flipping the script on things, but it's just recognizing the power that we hold. In the same way that you can look at things from the lens of when someone crosses the road or they grab their purse, it comes from a place of fear. It also stems from a place of power, and recognizing the power that is inherently within you, and your unique experiences. We have unique experiences through growing up through the things that we have, figuring out ways to leverage that, figuring out ways to use that to connect with other people, will unto itself make you even more powerful, make you even more introspective, more intelligent, and ultimately hopefully make you more successful in the process as well. So I think for me, it's really kind of just stepping into those moments where it is difficult, but choosing to take a higher path. I think that there's something incredibly empowering in that.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love it. I love being Black. It ain't nobody I'd rather be.
100%.
Well, we are getting to the end, and I just have to say thank you so much for giving me your time. And I'm gonna give you something funny. I did the time wrong. I thought I was counting right, and I didn't. And so I was ready since like 2:30 my time. So, but it still gave me time to prepare. So I thank you so much for your time.
No problem. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
Of course, anytime. And can I count on you maybe for another podcast in the future?
Yeah, give me a shout. Give me a shout.
Most definitely. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Cosigns and Tangents. This is your girl, Saina Wynn. And of course, I hope you guys have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye-bye.